Hello and welcome to the Crochet Circle podcast. This is episode 27 and it's called Global Hookup. I hope you're all doing well. It's freezing cold here at the moment. We've had quite a bit of snow today. It's lying a little bit, but it's not, this is Cheshire in England, so snow is not snow like everybody else knows it. We get a little smattering and everything stops because people aren't used to it. But, it's enough that it made me happy when I looked out the window this morning. So yeah, we've got a little bit of snow and I'm trying everything in my power to combat the darker day that it is out there. So I've got lots of lights on. If you're watching, this is as good as I can get it for this episode. So hopefully it's not too dark for you. So let's tell you what we've got coming up in this episode. There's quick news beats, got a few bits and pieces for you there. Old dog new tricks, finished objects, whips, dips, feeding the habit, big up. And instead of doing, usually I would finish off the podcast with what's good. And I always liked that because it meant that it was finished off on something really positive. And so it's still going to finish off on something positive, but the new section is called J'adore. And it's basically a little list of things that I have been loving this month, because I tend to dip into things and really burrow down on that area, and then I'll find something else to go and rabbit hole into. So there's a definite theme to a lot of my J'adore moments this month. So yeah, finishing on a positive, but hopefully giving you more reference points for other bits and pieces that you might find interesting for your own lives. That was the thinking behind it, really. You can find me in all of the usual places. If you're listening to me on Podbean, all of those places are listed at the bottom of the show notes. And if you're watching me on YouTube, then you can see all of that information on the drop down. I'm predominantly on Instagram and Ravelry. That's the best place to find me. So, quick news beats. Well, the first one really has to be global hookups. We've had 2 of them now, and they've been so much fun. The first one was about 1 hour and 15 minutes, and the second one was about 1 hour and 50 minutes. And it's just been so nice to have people from all over the world come in and have a crafting session together. So in the first one, we had people in from Switzerland, Russia, the US, Canada, Scotland, England, all over the place. It was really good. And then the one that we just had on Saturday night, we managed to get four Australians in on the session. People again from the US, from all over the UK, Switzerland. I think somebody may have been in from Germany as well. And it's just really good fun. It's very informal. I asked some questions to keep the chit chat going, and if you want to speak up, you speak up, and if you don't, then you don't, and you can keep yourself on mute, or you can put a post-it note over your camera if you don't want to be seen. So even if you just want to come in and be part of the global hookup, then all you need to do is go into the Zoom meeting that I set up in advance, and then you define what your own parameters are. It's really good fun to be able to sit and craft with people. So yeah, it's been fantastic. And the next one is due on the 24th of March. Usually I try and do it for the last Saturday of every month, but that one happens to be the Easter weekend. And I figured lots of people will be off on holiday doing other things, and that it was best to do it the weekend before. So Saturday 24th of March, and that will be from 8 o'clock GMT to 9:30 GMT. And yeah, it's really good fun. And if you want to follow what people are up to, you can see it on Instagram as well with #GlobalHookup. So yeah, come along. Even if you're not sure about it, come and give it a little chance for 10 minutes. It takes about 10 minutes for everyone to get set up and the muting and unmuting to happen, and then for the technology to settle in a bit, and then everyone gets into a routine and sits and crochets and crafts away, and it's just really nice to have a proper natter with lots of people. And there will be lots of familiar faces in there that you might know from other podcasts or people that you know from Instagram or Ravelry groups. So it's a really lovely mixture of people. And I'm 100% continuing with the global hookups. And if I can, every now and then, I might just put a little extra one in. So keep an eye on the Ravelry thread for global hookups and keep an eye on the Crochet Circle podcast Instagram group, because I might just every now and then think, oh, I've got a spare hour, who fancies a global hookup, and put it out. Really good fun. I'm so pleased with the way that it is turning out, and I think I'm going to develop it into part of an interview strategy as well, because it seems to work really well and I can record it. So that's so I can record an interview and then upload that to YouTube, which means that I could be interviewing people from all over the world, which could be really interesting. And one of the suggestions that Claudia from Crochet Luna podcast had during the hookup was I don't just interview like designers, dyers, companies, but I also interview other people that are just crafters but maybe have got a slightly different and interesting lifestyle. So her suggestion was someone like Hayley, who lives in the Yukon. Hayley's ears are probably pricking up right now and going, what? But I think it's a great suggestion because Hayley lives in a very remote area where it's difficult to shop, it's difficult to get post. She can be snowed in, it could be -30, -40, and that's so foreign from the lifestyle that many of us lead, and it would be really interesting to see how she copes with that and how that informs the way that she crafts and what she crafts. So watch this space. Hayley, do you want to be interviewed? Would you like to be our global hookup interview guinea pig? More on that if she says yes. Please say yes, Hayley. So that was global hookup. Look out for the next one. Information is already in the Ravelry thread, and I will pop it out on Instagram probably a couple of days before, so you've got time for it to filter through the Instagram timelines. Now, kind of similar-ish, and this is mainly for it's actually for the UK people that live in and around the centre of England. I have been talking with somebody, it's a lady called Marie, and she is keen to set up a contemporary crochet publication, which is something that I am desperate to happen. I have long wanted like a pom-pom quarterly lane making style publication that is for crochet, that really is beautiful and contemporary and gorgeous and has those lifestyle elements, and there is nothing like that at the moment globally. There's nothing that I know of. If you know of something, please let me know. Some of them, like Making and Pom Pom Quarterly, occasionally have a crochet pattern, but there isn't one that is just crochet or predominantly crochet with sometimes showing other crafts. Marie would like to create one, and I've known this for a year now, and so I've been talking with her in earnest in the last couple of weeks, just asking questions as to when it might happen, if it's still on her agenda. And we've had a little flurry of emails going back and forth over the last couple of days. And she made a suggestion, and I was like, right, fine, yep, I'll make that happen. I'm recording tomorrow, I will put it out on the podcast, and let's see if anyone's interested. So what Marie's doing is she's setting up a kind of a little crafting tea party focus research group. I don't know how long it will take, probably a couple of hours, and it's going to be on Sunday the 25th of March, and it's going to be in Birmingham. So there are a few things to bear in mind. You would have to get yourself to Birmingham. Marie will then provide the event location and refreshments and stuff. We can take up to about 25 people. And what she would like to do is be able to sit and craft with you and ask some questions about what you would like to see in a publication. This is really, really exciting because I am busting to have this kind of a publication. So I'm going to be there on the 25th, but I think the idea is that it's a very informal way of getting information out. Now, one of the things that you would need to do if you're coming is sign an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. And basically it says that the information is not to be shared. I can understand wholeheartedly why Marie would want to do that. I've done the same with my test crocheters and test knitters. It's about protecting your information and protecting the way that you can take a project forward. So if you wanted to be part of this session on the 25th of March, you would have to sign off a non-disclosure agreement. It's a fairly standard piece of paper. It's a fairly standard contract to sign off. So more on that. What I will do is pop Marie's email address into the show notes, and I also put it on the screen just now. So if you're interested in joining Marie and myself for that session, then please email Marie and we will add you onto the list for this little crochet hookup research session ready for a potential contemporary crochet magazine. To say I'm excited about this is really putting it very, very mildly. I have wanted to do this myself for about 2 years and I just don't have the time. But I will do everything in my power to help somebody else get this off the ground, because I think it's a phenomenal idea and one that's got legs. I really do. So excited. So that's that's the Crochet Tea Party Meetup research session done. The next one is that the Different Designer Cal, if you're watching this on the Friday, it started yesterday on the 1st of March. I'm going to run this just as a really kind of low-key Cal, and it will go on until the 8th of April, but the whole idea is that you choose a different designer, and I can show you 2 of the things in my whips that I will be doing with different designers for this Cal. If you go to the Ravelry thread, all the information is there. But like I say, I'm probably a bit slow off the mark on getting this Cal up and running, so it's going to be a low-key one because I'm up against it with lots of other time pressures at the moment. But all the same, please do come along, join in if you want to, or just have a look on the sidelines and see what everybody else is up to. The hashtag on Instagram for that is Different Designer Cal. So yeah, that started on the 1st, runs till the 8th of April. Somehow I think I'm also going to crochet a jumper for that Cal. I love putting pressure on myself. Too much pressure. Next one is Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and this is just a really quick one. It's not so much about the festival itself, but more to say that if you're going either on the Thursday or the Saturday and you wanted something from my shop, Knit It, Hook It, Craft It, and you don't want to pay postage and packaging, then just put an order in the shop, add a note to tell me whether you're going to be there on the Thursday or the Saturday, and I will then bring your goodies to you in Edinburgh, so you don't pay postage and packaging. So if you're coming from abroad, this will save you quite a lot of money. It costs a lot of money to get some of my goods over abroad. Or things like yarn bowls I won't post abroad. You could then buy them and I can bring them to you. And like I say, you'll save on the postage and packaging, and I will be your own personal delivery service. So I've got quite a few bits and pieces to take up to people, a few orders rolling in for people that want me to do that. So yeah, thank you for ordering, and I'm quite happy to take a big suitcase up to Edinburgh, offload all the things to you people, and then have space to bring other stuff back down in my suitcase. That doesn't sound like a hardship at all. Yep, let's see what comes back from Edinburgh with me. The final one on quick news beats is that over the weekend I went and saw a couple of not local yarn shops, local-ish yarn shops that are about an hour and 20 minutes away from me, and hopefully I will have pulled together a little vlog on them, and I do mean little. I had an issue with my camera, so some of the video hasn't come out. But if you're in and around the Lancaster area in Lancashire, England, unsurprisingly, or you're heading that way over the summer and coming weeks, or you're just interested to see a couple of new yarn shops that have opened up in the last few months, then go and have a look at that vlog. Really beautiful yarn shops carrying very different stock. Yeah, and you'll see some of the bits and pieces that I bought from them during Feeding the Habit session. yeah, so there's another little vlog hopefully for you to go and have a look at too. That is it for quick news beats. So I'm going to roll on into Old Dog New Tricks. If you have a ball winder and long hair, when you are winding your ball of yarn up, as I discovered, it's best not to lean over it with your hair, because your hair can and potentially will get trapped into the ball and then you'll be winding your head into it. So if you're going to do that and you have long hair, then please tie your hair up, because I managed to do it twice on the same ball of yarn because I am a numpty. So from now on in, my hair gets tied up whenever I'm using my ball winder, because it wasn't that much fun winding my head into it and then having to wind my head back out of the ball winder. You may remember I had this hat, the Borganis hat, and when I'd sewn it up I wasn't happy with the way that it had sewn up on the top. I think I said it was nipple shaped and I didn't want a nipple on top of my head. And so what I found was another technique. When you finished your final round, cut the yarn and fasten it off as you normally would by pulling the tail through. And then let's say you've got 8 stitches all the way around. What I would do is only work into the front loop only of each of those stitches, and you're going from left, under, into the middle. And you do that for each and every stitch. And what I found is you can usually get maybe 3 or 4 stitches on the needle at one time before you pull the thread through, and then do it again until you've caught up all of those 8 or however many stitches it is, and then pull the yarn through to the tension that you want it to be at, and then sew in the ends as you normally would on the inside of your hat. But it made a massive difference to the finished hat that I have. And I also did it with a pair of mittens that I'll be showing you in finished objects, and again it just gave it a really nice neat finish. It wasn't bumpy, you weren't adding lots of extra yarn to it, which you would do if you were doing a slip stitch or a double crochet to finish off that round. So it's a really neat way of closing up the gap without creating any puckering or extra bulk. I really liked it, and I'll pop a photo of that into the show notes for you so you can see exactly how it is that I did that. Right, that is it for Old Dog New Tricks. So let's show you some finished objects. I have just quickly gone and put on the first one that I've got, which is my Inclination Wrap by Joan Conradi. I really enjoyed doing this, and I think I said last time that it was going to be a whopper, and it was. And I love having really big shawls, and although the pattern calls for cotton, I wanted to do it in DK weight wool because I wanted something that was really big and warm, and it is most definitely that. I think the finished wrap came in at something like 680 grams. So I did a massive amount of stash busting on this one, and it is really lovely and warm, and it can be worn in all sorts of ways, but I found the best ways for me to keep it almost like an asymmetric shawl and add a shawl pin to it because of the weight, and although it's really big it kind of wants to shift around quite a bit, so I just added a shawl pin that I got from, now my pronunciation is going to be horrendous here because it's Irish, but I think it's Anketenbiach. I think I've probably got that wrong. I might, yeah. So this was a mixture of drops Charisma in the mid-grey colour, some hand-dyed yarn that I had dyed up at a workshop, which was actually an Aran weight, but I don't think you can tell within the pattern itself that I've gone from DK to an Aran on some of the yarn. What it did mean was I ran out of some of that, but because there are natural stripes running through the pattern anyway, it didn't really matter, because it meant that I knew I was going to have more of the Life in the Long Grass, which is the variegated one with the pops of yellow and maroon and the light grey in it. So I had an inkling that I would probably have enough of that to take me to the end, and I'm not joking, I've probably got about, if I'm lucky, 3 metres of Life in the Long Grass left at the end of the shawl, so it's absolutely perfect because I've used up all of my hand dyed, and I've used up most of the skein of my life in the long grass. It couldn't have been better if I planned it. And I used up, I think, 7 balls of the drops charisma that I had. So I think I've maybe got 1 or 2 balls of that left. So I'm rather pleased with it. I was going to put it back on Claude, but it's keeping my back warm, so I might just have to keep it warm. I also have a hot water bottle on my lap because freezing today with the snow, and my heater's okay, but it doesn't pump out just quite as much warmth as I would like it to. What else have I finished? Oh yeah. So one of the things you may have noticed is that as a crochet designer, I probably don't appear to be that prolific, and the reality is I am quite prolific, but I've been doing so much stuff for Erica Knight that everything else has pretty much had to go to the wayside. And then the next thing that I started working on was the Borganis pattern, which is nearly finished, bar the fact that I dropped down a mitten sizing rabbit hole because I wanted to be able to offer a pattern that really fitted people properly. And when I started looking into hand anatomy, what I discovered was that I don't really think it's good enough to just say you're a European size 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 or whatever you are, because when I looked into the hand anatomy, my hand would be a lady's large, my thumb length would be a lady's extra small, and my finger length would be a lady's extra large. So my hand doesn't fit into the standard measurements that you would have for gloves within the UK or Europe, and therefore not anywhere else. So what I've done is quite a lot of work on how I can do sizing for DK and 4-ply yarns, and how I can then apply that not just to this mitten and fingerless mitten pattern, but how I can apply it to any future patterns that I have going forward. And whilst that has been a really worthwhile piece of work, it just means it is delayed getting this pattern out a little bit. But I have done them in both fingerless and a mitten, and the mittens are actually in a lovely kind of dark green, which in my little brain when I was taking photos of them yesterday made the full mitten look like a glove puppet. Every photo that I was trying to take, all I was thinking was, oh look, it's Nessie against the sky, or oh look, it's Nessie, i.e. the Loch Ness Monster, having a wee chat or going for a swim. Just once that was in my head, I could not take photographing the full mitten seriously. So luckily I waited and did it again today when they had the snow, which was far more appropriate, but it no longer looks like Nessie. But every time I put it on, I now see the Loch Ness Monster in my mitten. Honestly, I think they might come and take me away at some point. So 2 more finished objects that are almost ready to go off to the pattern testers I've had lined up for quite some time. But yeah, they will be coming soon. Roughly round and about where in the Northern Hemisphere we've got summertime, I'll be ready to give you a cowl, hat and mittens pattern, because that's how I roll. Yes. So that's it for finished objects. Like I say, not masses, but you know, this thing was a whopper at, like I said, just under 700 grams, and the other bits have been really quite involved. So next month I will have more. One of the things I will have next month is a knitted version of Doppio Colosseum. This is one of the reasons that I haven't done that much, is because it was mentioned to me at the Nottingham Yarn Expo that I did in November, that it would be helpful to have a knitted version of Doppio Colosseum on the John Arbon stand. And me being me, I just went, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll see what I can do. And I thought they don't really mean it, and I don't like to push myself upon people, so I kind of forgot about it. Thought, if I get to it, it will be a nice to have. And then I went to the Unravel Festival a couple of weekends ago and saw John and Juliet there. And Juliet basically said, so when are we getting the knitted version? I was like, oh, you do really want it then? Yes, I thought you were working on it. I was like, no, but I can do. And then me just emailed her back and said, I could probably maybe get it to you for Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which is in no time at all. It's in like 2 weeks' time. Like I say, I love putting pressure on myself. And she's come back to say, I'll email you back properly, but yes, that would be good. Frick! So I now have to knit up. I've sorted all the pattern out, but I now need to knit up a version of Doppio Colosseum that will be on the stand at Edinburgh Yarn Festival and have the pattern ready to go, tech edited. So I've got Deb, my tech editor, on red alert waiting for this pattern to come out, which she will get during this week. And then between now and like 8 days time, I have to have that knitted pattern ready to go, and I will not let them down. So if I'm quiet for a little while, I've got steam coming off a pair of knitting needles and my laptop as I'm furiously pulling together a pattern together. But it's such a great opportunity, given how international Edinburgh Yarn Festival is. Can you imagine 2 of my shawl, well actually 3, because they want basalt as well up there. So on the John Arbon stand I would have my crocheted basalt shawl, crocheted Doppio Colosseum and a knitted version of Doppio Colosseum. That's amazing exposure that I am ever grateful for. So, you know, a few sleepless nights to get something done so that I've got that exposure. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Crazy lady though. Crazy lady. So, works in progress. I feel a bit cheaty bringing these to the table, but let's do it anyway. One is still a future whip, but I wanted to show you the yarn because it is glorious. Claudia, Crochet Luna podcast, is running a fortune cookie cal. And, well, 1, I just love her because she's a dude. And 2, I want to be able to support her cal. And 3, I'm doing stash bingo with myself this year where I have to use up my stash, but I'm going to try and do it all through cals. So there's more emphasis on me doing more cals, both knitted and crocheted, and using up specific yarns. And the one that I've chosen for the cal is called the Rhubarb Patch. This is one of my favourite yarn companies in the UK. They're called The Little Grey Sheep, and they have got all sorts of breeds that they have on their farm. And the one that I'm going to use is Gotland, and it's a 4-ply. And I love the information you get on the back. It says, sheared by Susie, washed in Yorkshire, spun in Devon by John Arbon, and dyed on the farm by Emma. And it is exactly a rhubarb patch. So it has that acidic pink and acidic green that you get in rhubarb, and that bluey grey, almost teal tone that you can get in the underside of rhubarb as well. And because it is Gotland, it has a sheen to it, which is lovely. And it also has quite a halo on it, and it's very lofty, so it's very airy, and it smells amazing. Gotland just does smell amazing as a sheep breed, and I cannot wait to get this used. This was a very special one skeiner that I had, and I've had it I think for 2.5 years now. As Emma at Little Grey Sheep would say, it's a vintage one. They don't do this anymore, but what I've done is in the show notes I have provided a link to their Gotland 4-ply part of their website, so if you wanted to take a look you can see which other ones they've got in there. So this has got 330 metres to the 100 grams, and I wasn't sure what to do with this, and I've been a bit stuck on a pattern, and then I thought I had sorted one out today, and then I was watching Lacey's podcast, which I'll tell you about in Big Up, and she had been pattern testing Hannah from the Cozy Cottage Crochets Treasure Island shawl, and I was like, bingo, that is what I'm going to do. So one, I can do Hannah's pattern, which would be amazing. 2, I'm taking part in Claudia's Cal. 3, it works for my different designer Cal, because I have never done anything of Hannah's before. And 4, I'm getting to use a British breed yarn, which smells lovely, is lovely to touch and hold, and just makes me very happy. So what could be better than this? So I'll be cracking on with that in the next couple of days. I thought I might have got a couple of rows done today, but I haven't. But I did do with my next one that I am working on, which is another little cheaty McCheaty one, because I've literally done 6 rows, so I could come here today and tell you that I've got it as a whip. A little bit of a cheat, but my podcast, my rules, I think. So the other whip that I have, and when I say it's 6 rows, I really, really mean it. It's teeny tiny. But when it grows up, it's going to be a very beautiful 3-skein shawl. And it's a shawl by Sarah Hazel, and it's called the Stobra shawl. I'll show the pattern up here because you won't see anything from it on the top, but I'll also add some photos into the show notes and in here. If you've never come across Sarah Hazel before, then check her out. Check her out. She has been designing for many, many years, and she does really gorgeous contemporary designs. And she is just an absolute honey pie. She is so lovely. And she just does really nice different designs. And I've had my eye on this one for ages. I think I bought it when it came back out, it was part of her Purbeck collection, and it might have been more than a year ago. So it's been queued up and waiting. And you may remember last year when I was doing lots of the natural dyeing, I had dyed up 3 skeins of a skinny merino, and I think one was with an oak gall and 2 were with acorns, I think. And the 3 actually complement each other really quite nicely, because they go up in a gradient from a light fawny grey to a kind of slightly darker, and then into the darker with the oak gall. But the 3 work really nicely together. And the way that the shawl works is you start with the smaller section and you can literally just keep on going. It's repeats of 6 rows. So it's actually a really easy pattern to memorise and work from. And it's gorgeous. You wouldn't think it when you look at it because it looks so intricate, but actually it's a nice little, it's not a brain teaser of a pattern. But what it also means is that although I'm using a different weight yarn from the one that Sarah set out, because mine is 400 metres rather than 350 metres per 100 grams, I'll just be able to keep on going and use up every last drop of my yarn, which is absolutely perfect. I don't really like having lots of yarn left over from patterns. And I have also gone up a hook size, so it calls for a 3mm. I'm using a 3.5mm because I just prefer it, and I wanted a slightly more open texture for the yarn. And what I also know from using it before is that the skinny merino, when you wash and block it, plumps up quite a lot. So if I was using a 3mm hook and then this shawl plumps up, that's got the potential to give me quite a dense fabric. But I reckon with the 3.5mm hook, it should be just right for the type of fabric that I'm after with this. So I'll take some photos and show you the beginnings of this pattern. Sarah, she's been in touch with me today, and she's actually working on another version of this in a different yarn and adding beads to it. So Stobra is available on Ravelry and also through her website. It's a really nicely written out pattern, really simply done. She's not like over-egged it. It's just, I think, 4 pages, but really nicely laid out with stitch counts at the end of every single row, which I know a lot of you love. So that's one of the things Sarah does, which I really like and appreciate as well. So although my little mini shawl doesn't look like much yet, it will do. Come next podcast, I'm really struggling with words today. come next podcast, there will be a bit more on this little fellow. I don't know how much more, because obviously I've got a shawl to knit and design. But there'll be more on it somewhere. A couple more rows at least. And then my next little whip is a little bit different. It's actually some embroidery that I've been doing, but I thought I would show it off because it does link back into the podcast. Now, I bought a book which is called Mandalas to Embroider, and it's by a lady called Karina Involdson Harris. This was mentioned on Chrissy Craft's podcast. What Chrissy doesn't know is that my personal name for her is My Little Cupcake. So this was on My Little Cupcakes podcast. I love Chrissy. She's an absolute lovely. And as she was talking about it on her podcast, I went straight to go and buy it because it was just a fantastic book. And it's absolutely full of mandalas that you can embroider up. So if you're not overly confident about doing embroidery, I recommend this book because it has iron-on transfers that you can take out of the back, and then you can iron it onto your project, and these can be used kind of up to 10 times, and it even has a really nice little pocket at the back for holding your transfers once you've torn them off the perforated strips at the back. So it means you can get loads and loads of use out of this book. And like me, if you wouldn't have been that confident about transferring either by hand or pattern drawing out a mandala onto your fabric, then that is a really neat way of doing it. There's no way I would be doing this mandala embroidery were it not for those iron-on transfers, because I just wouldn't have had the confidence to do it. So initially I was going to sell some of these big linen bags. This is natural linen, it's completely undyed, and I kind of went against it, so I'm not selling them in the shop. So I had a couple left over, and I thought, I know, that would be perfect for me to do a mandala on. And actually it's a really lovely big bag, which is a great size for a kind of jumper project, and given that I want to do more garments this year, then I thought that was a really good way forward. And I have just picked out 3 different linens. It's a 5-ply linen, which I bought from, they sell online, but she also goes to quite a lot of the shows, and it is a company called Nemolio. And it is, of course, a sludge fawny colour, a dark grey and a mustard colour. I mean, what a surprise, really. But I think it looks fabulous against the natural linen on the bag that I had already made up. Now, the bag did originally have a hot pink ribbon handle and hot pink stitching, so all I've done is added a grey ribbon instead for the drawstring, and I've top stitched over the hot pink with the dark grey. I really love it. But the reason I'm mentioning this is because I'm also embroidering on the back, and what I'm adding are Scrabble tiles. And this one, once I've finished it, is actually going to say clarity across it. So my plan is, every year when I have another word for me and for the podcast, I'm going to have to make it work in forms of a Scrabble board. So whatever word I come up with, it's going to somehow have to represent one of the letters within clarity. And the other thing I was thinking that I might do is so on the last 4 squares, Scrabble tiles, it will have 2018, and then I'll put whatever the actual number scores are for each of the other letters at the beginning. And then every subsequent year, the very last 4 letters of the word will have 2019, 2020. So I will have this really lovely way of marking what my words have been for each year, and it's a way of me just developing more and more with this bag and adding to it, rather than doing another bag, or a hoop or something different. I thought this would be a really nice way of commemorating what my word of the year has been from 2018 onwards. Next bit is designs in progress, and I just have a couple for you. One's knitted and one is crocheted. Not sure why I had to sing that at you, but crocheted. Even just for those listening, I just also added some jazz hands for you. Crochet designs in progress. Maybe snow makes me go a bit batty. Maybe that's what it is. So last episode, I was saying that I am not a fan of the granny stitch or granny square. And I'm not alone. I am not the only one to feel like this about it. I don't hate it. Somebody came back and said, oh, I hate it too. And I was like, no, I don't hate it. It's just not for me. It's just not what I love. But what I have to say is that doing it in the monochrome colours I'm doing it in, so a very, very dark charcoal grey, a mid-grey and a light grey, I'm more inclined to like it. I still don't love it. I still don't think I'm ever going to love it. What I do like is, well, I like the fact that I can do the stitch because it's very repetitive. So I was able to do it during the global hookup. I wouldn't have been able to do much more. I probably could have knitted a sock during the global hookup because I could just drill around and do the same thing. But in itself, the repetitive nature, unless I was adding lots of different colour stripes, so you've got that goal of getting to the next stripe, the next stripe, the next stripe, I think it's probably a bit too repetitive for me. But I do really like the way it's working up. And this is either going to be a lap blanket for me, or the cat might steal it because Pombre absolutely loves Icelandic yarn. So we'll see. He and I will fight it out and we'll see who wins. But I really love the way that the three colours are coming together. And what I'm doing is using the dark charcoal as my main colour. So that started with 10 stripes of the dark charcoal, 2 stripes of the mid-grey, 1 stripe of the light, 2 mid-grey, and then 8 stripes of the dark charcoal. And then doing the same colour repeat but inversing it, so 2 light grey, 1 mid-grey, 2 light grey, and then it will be 6 stripes of the dark charcoal, mid-grey, light grey, mid-grey, 4 stripes of the dark charcoal. So the stripes, the dark charcoal stripes are getting smaller as it moves up through the piece, and then the mid and light grey stripes become more dominant. And I thought that was a nice way of adding a bit of a different design element to it. And I think I might add a border all the way around it as well, in part because I used this yarn for a different blanket that I did for Take Two, and I really liked the way that the border worked on that blanket, so I might just recreate it on this lap blanket as well. It really finished the piece off, and it the way that the colours blended from one to the other, it just looks really good. It's actually one of my crochet things I'm kind of most proud of, which sounds a bit bizarre because it's just a border around a blanket, but I just really like the design element of it, so I might mimic it in this one as well. But it's so quick to do. I'm using a chunky yarn. So that's design in progress number 1. And what I'm going to do with that when I've finished it, I will write up the pattern and I'll do it as a blog post. So if anybody else likes what I've done and wants to do it in your own colour range, your own yarn range, I'll give you all of the information that you need for extending it widthwise, or doing whatever, but I'll show you the basic pattern for what I've done and chart it out for you. It might just take me a couple of months because life is busy and free patterns are not my main priority right now, but it is on my to-do list to get that done for you. And my next design in progress is the next iteration of my mini Mania socks. Now these ones are a little bit brighter than my previous ones, which were in very autumnal tones, but I thought it would be good to show it in a different set of colours. And I got these at Unravel the other weekend, and the whole premise of this is trying to create a sock that has, as much as possible, a jogless stripe going up it that uses mini skeins rather than self-striping yarn. I like self-striping yarn, but what I quite often find is that you can see a very different step change from one colour into the next, I'm not that keen on that. So by using minis, you can actually control the jog a little bit more, and the jog will always be at the same one place because you're chopping and changing where the rounds are. So I have now done all of the work that I need to do on this pattern in terms of the technique, because I've road tested it as well. And in particular, what I was road testing was how I join and how well the jogless stripes work with the join, and in particular focus with where the join is on the base of the foot, because that will take quite a lot of wear and tear as you wear it in your boots or shoes or any of your footwear. And I don't want to put out a pattern that just is going to have a sock that people aren't happy with, where it might show holes in it. And I really think that I've hit upon a technique that sorts those two potential issues out. And then the next part of it is that I used, these are the minis from Becky at River Knits. So it's 100% Blue Face Leicester. There's no nylon in this. It is super washed. So I've been road testing how well that wears, and the answer is very well. And also whether, if I got 7 20-gram minis rather than the standard 5 or 6 that you get in a pack, Becky sells them in 6, could you get 2 pairs of socks out of it? And I think the answer is yes. I'm going to really push this one and see. I have a size 7 foot, and I've been doing these on a 2.25mm needle and 60 stitches. And I measured Matthew's feet the other day, because he said if I didn't do it with this bright purpley pink contrast, he would actually wear another pair of these socks. I nearly fainted. So I've got a dark teal that I would put into his pair, but I will then be working out whether with his foot size and the dark teal, whether I can get a second pair of socks out of that. So for 140 grams, potentially 2 pairs of socks. So the basic pattern is itself Mini Mania, and then I'm doing this extra piece of work to find out exactly how many pairs of socks you could get if you were going to go and buy minis, because I think that's quite useful information to have, and then you're not left again with lots of wool at the end of the project, lots of little bits of wool. So I have 1.5 socks done, so I have 2.5 still to go. And I've got somebody ready, lined up to pattern test these for me, and I've got the pattern nearly ready to head over to her. So yeah, watch the space. Again, it's going to be a little while because life's a bit busy, but as soon as I have these up on Ravelry, I'll let you guys know first. And as with all of my patterns, I bring them to the podcast first, and you always get a discount code for a month or so, and then I put them up to full price. I'm quite excited about the Mini Mania socks. I think I'll possibly love them even more when I do Matthew's pair, because I really like the contrast of this bright pinky purple, but I really, really love the dark teal that I've got for his contrast ones. That may also be bound up in the fact that my husband finally wants a pair of knitted socks. Let's show you what I've been gathering in during the month of February. There's quite a lot, but there's method in my madness. One of the things that I've been trying to do is rationalise my stash. So if I've got something in that I wanted to do a design with, and I want to make sure that that yarn is still available, and also if I've not been quite sure about a colour, then swapping it out. So I've got all the colours ready to go, and I've got everything that I need for the next design coming through the pipeline. And that's really what I managed to focus in on at Unravel. I went and I had a list. I was very good, and that's what I went and shopped. And I met up with Flick and Helen, and we spent most of the day together, so they can attest to the fact that I was really quite good, and pretty much I stuck to my list. I got the stuff that I needed from all of the vendors I went to see. And yeah, it was a really good day. It was lovely to spend time with the ladies, and I also went off and met with Chrissy from Chrissy Crafts podcast, and also saw Sandra from Cherry Heart podcast. Who else was there? Sharma and Sarah from Annaboo's house. and then I managed to meet lots of other people as well. So it was a fab day, and they have lovely vendors at Unravel as well, and it's a nice location. It's lots of little different rooms, so it doesn't feel like a sterile environment, which some of the bigger roomed exhibitions can feel like. This is like lots of little nooks and crannies to go and investigate, and they have some really lovely suppliers there as well. I missed loads of them because sometimes a day isn't enough at a craft show and a yarn show, and you need a bit more time. So there are quite a few folk that I missed off. But here's what I did get. And what I'm going to do is show and talk to you about some of the ones I already had, and then what I needed to marry them up with. So I had from the John Arbon Knit by Numbers range in their teal colours, the light and mid teal. Now originally these were going to be another basalt shawl, and when I was working up the design I came to the conclusion that I didn't like it when they were striped together, that actually it just looked like a bit of a candy stripe and it didn't do what I wanted it to do within the pattern. And so what I did was another yarn show that I went with, I swapped out, because I've made the pattern in grey, and I swapped out one of the greys and doubled up one of the other colours, and really loved the resulting pattern for that. But it meant that I had teals left, and I have since worked up a 3 skein crocheted shawl and a knitted version of it. So you might see more of this from me in the future, as if some designs, if I do it in crochet, I'll also try and reproduce it knitted as well. But I needed a third colour to go with this one, and so we have a dark teal to match off. So you will get the 3 together in a shawl, and the teals are going to be the crocheted version. And if you follow John Arbon on Instagram, you may have seen that he is introducing a copper colourway into the Knit by Numbers range. And it's gorgeous. I love copper. It's really one of my favourite colours. And for Unravel, he had taken the DK versions, but he hadn't yet worked on the 4-ply. But he is taking them up to Edinburgh, so they will be ready for Edinburgh Yarn Festival. And Juliet at Edinburgh Yarn Festival will have a little bag for me, and she will be handing me over one of each of the copper colours, so I can then work up the next shawl design for them. So the other thing that I was passed by Juliet is her Devonia, which is in colourway Bleeding Heart. Now, I saw Helen was wearing this. She made up my crisscross shawl, and she made it in this colour, in the Devonia, and it was like a little puff of air. It had I think pretty much most of 2 skeins in it, and it was just lovely and light and very warm. You know, when she took it off from around her neck and I was looking at it, it retained the heat in the shawl. It was really beautiful. And if you've been watching the podcast for a while or listening, you'll know that I have a real love of this yarn. I love the Devonia range that they brought out. It was at Edinburgh Yarn Festival last year. It's 50% Exmoor Blueface, 30% Blueface Leicester, and 20% Wensleydale, and it's all grown in Devon, and then it's spun by John in Devon as well. So this is the colourway that I am doing the knitted Doppio Colosseum in. So there's only 1 skein showing here because the other one is already caked up and being worked on. Being worked on means that I thought I had the design set, realised overnight that it wasn't, frogged the lot, and I need to start again by casting on something like 530 stitches. Not a task I'm really relishing, but I know that the shawl will work better top down rather than bottom up, so I need to just get over it. Another set that I already had in my stash is by Whistlebear, and this is their Yavering Bell Aran, and it's reared in Northumberland and spun in Yorkshire and dyed by hand. This is a really special yarn. You can see on it, it's got a real sheen to it, and it shows up nicely in the photos I've already taken for the show notes as well. And it's 80% of their own mohair and 20% of their Wensleydale wool, so goat and sheep in there. And it's just lovely. I bought these 2 colours because I wanted to do a shawl that is based on metallics. So the grey is a very light silvery grey. The dark grey has got an almost purple hue to it, and it's like pewter. And then I was originally going to pair it up with the copper colour that she started doing. I'd been pestering her for this for a long, long time. And she started doing it. I just bought a mini, and when I got it home, I just wasn't convinced about the three colours together. Whilst I think the copper would work really well, it just wasn't quite going to do what I wanted to do in the mix. And I think the way that this shawl is going to work is it's going to be like drips of metal coming down, merging from one into the other. So I have a very specific idea in my mind of what I want this to look like, and I just wasn't feeling the love for the copper. So what I did was bought one which would be a bronze colour instead, and I'm much happier with these three colours together. So the greys are already owned, and what I've just done to it is brought the bronze to the party. So that's now ready again for a design. So whilst it probably looks like I've got a lot of yarn in front of me, quite a lot of it I already owned, and I'm just making sense of it all. Now the final things I got at Unravel was a set of minis, again by the Little Grey Sheep. So the same company that did the rhubarb patch ones that I'm using for Claudia's Cal. And this is their Hampshire yarn. And it's the mini skeins are 82 metres per 20 grams. And again, sheepy smelling. And these are going to be made up into a cowl. So I have quite a dark petrol blue, a lighter petrol blue, a warm fawny brown, dark, and then light, which has got, I say warm because it's got like pinky tones to it, and then the lighter fawn as well. And they are gorgeous together. But then what I'm going to do is pair it up with something a little bit zingier, which is a very, very bright green, like a proper green with a tinge of yellow to it. A chartreuse green, I guess people would call it. And this green is just going to act as a little bit of a colour lift at specific points throughout the cowl. So again, this is one where I already have the design idea set. I just needed the yarn. I did previously have other yarn, odds and sods of theirs, and I know that this is the yarn that I want to use for this cowl. And when I took them to the show to say, are you still doing these colours? Emma's response was, well, that's a vintage one. So that's a no, and there's no point, I don't think, in me designing up something in a colourway that you can't then go and replicate should you wish. Whereas I know from speaking with her that these colours are going to be absolutely fine. And that's the real benefit of going to a yarn show and seeing what they've got there, because you can actually talk to the producer and get hands-on and test it and make sure that it handles the way that you want it to handle for the design. So that was the next load. So that was the Sunday I went to Unravel, and then on the Monday I went to Stitches, which is a trade show which is held in the UK, where you get lots of the crafting companies descend on the National Exhibition Centre, and yarn shop owners, craft shop owners go to this to see what's new and coming through the market. And one of the stands that I was keen to go and visit was Bahram, who are a British-based company, and they have started doing, they're called colour pips. So really nice little 25 grams of wool. And they give me a little sample, which I think is in the colourway. It's either Rose Window or Bantam. But the idea is that these are just great for colour work. So perfect for tapestry crochet, for intarsia crochet where you just need a little bit. And these are retailing at £3.20 per 25 grams. And I asked the question, this is quite interesting, I said, oh, what breed is it? What blend is it? And they said it's not. It's just wool, it's a mix. And the problem is that if everybody goes down the breed specific route, then what you're left with is a lot of wool that is put to lesser use than it could be used for, if that makes sense, because there might not be enough of it, or it's a breed that people don't necessarily want, but it's still completely worthy when you blend it of being added to a blend that can go into something like this wool. And I thought that was quite an interesting take on it, because whilst, you know, certainly I really love the idea of being breed specific, what I wouldn't want to then do is create a waste problem further down the line with other breeds of wool. So I really like this idea that it's not breed specific, but what it is making sure that really good wool that is suitable for handcrafting is actually being used. So I like that, and the colours are also very complementary against each other, and I felt some garments that had been knitted up with the pip colour works, and it was really nice. It was beautiful, very heathered effect in the wool itself. So I'm looking forward to having a play with this. I'll make something little with it, but yeah, I quite like the idea of maybe doing something with this at a later date. Maybe have to work through some of my other colour work stuff that I've got in my stash first, but this is a reasonably new addition to their range, so you know it's not going anywhere. But I also like the idea, as they put it to me, it's just 15 colours, so it's easy enough for a yarn shop to stock because it's not hundreds of different colours. So when you go in, you should always be able to get those 15 colours if your local yarn shop stocks it. And I think she also said that some yarn stores in America were already stocking it. So it's not just a British yarn shop thing. And you can also buy it online as well. So watch this space on this one. It might take me a little while to get round to it, but yeah, I'm looking forward to having a play with it. Next up on the pile of things that I have acquired, you may remember me showing you a skein of yarn that I had from Bernie at Bear and Sheep's Clothing. It's called Killadoon, and it's on their Bear Massam mix, which is 25% Massam. That's why they call it Bear Massam. Well done, Faye. Gee whiz. 25% mid-brown Massam and 75% Blueface Leicester. So it's really lovely and soft to handle. It's warm. It's the same blend that I made my homebody sweater out of, so I know it's nice and I loved working with it. What I wanted to do was pair this up with another colour of Bernie's, and she has now dyed it up for me and sent it to me, and it is called Damson Gin, and oh, I love these two together. So the damson colour that she's done as my main colour is also represented in Killadoon, and I think she's now selling this in her shop as well. So I thought I was going to make one specific pattern out of this, and I still might, but it might be another pattern that's now bubbling away because I love the two of them together. So I don't quite know how this is going to work out, but something will be amazing will be made with these two skeins. Yeah, we'll see what comes back out the noodle machine that is my brain. But yeah, if it comes to it, I will go back onto the original pattern that I got the yarn for, and if not, I will dream up something completely new. I love what Bernie does. She's very particular about using British breed wools, and you'll hear a little bit more about Bernie in Big Up. So yeah, thank you for that, Bernie. I'm very much looking forward to getting these fellows onto my hooks. So I mentioned that I went up to Lancaster to check out a couple of yarn shops, and the first one that I went to is called the Freehold Yarn Company. It's run by a lady called Amy, and she's got a really lovely selection of yarns in there. But the one that I was particularly interested in is one that she crowdfunded to set up as her own yarn, and it's called Autumn. And it is 25% Gotland and 75% Blueface Leicester, and it's spun and dyed in Yorkshire, and it's spun up at Laxton's, which is great news for me because I know that as I would call it, the Laxton's Twist, works really nicely for crochet. It's one of the reasons that I always keep on going back to John and Juliet's yarn and anything that Laxton's have spun, which is also Bear and Sheep's Clothing, Bernie's stuff, is because I know that it works really nicely for crochet, and I find that not all yarn does. But a Laxton's and a John Arbon spin is good for crochet. And I wasn't really in the market for buying more yarn, having been at Unravel, but Amy showed me a knitted up sample that she had done in her light teal colour of the autumn, and it was so light. I mean, she'd purposefully done it on a slightly larger needle, but it was so beautifully light and airy, and I thought, yeah, this would be a really gorgeous shawl, or I might save my pennies and buy more of it and do some kind of a jumper or garment with it. I thought 2 was enough for one day, frankly. So yeah, it's got that lovely sheen that you would expect with Gotland, and it's got the soft handle that you would get with the Blue-Faced Leicester, and it's 385 metres per 100 grams, and it smells sheepy. But I loved the 2 colours together. They were my favourite 2. Yeah, really nice purchase. She also sells Lope, so I got a couple of other colours of Lope, in part because I want to test more Borgalis mittens out with them, and one of them's mustard, so I figured I could make myself a mustard Borgalis hat. And also it means that I know exactly the colour that I want my dad to bring me more Lope back in when he heads back off to Iceland in March. So expect more mustard in my wardrobe in 2018. She had all sorts of other bits and pieces, so I will give you a link to her website. She posts out, and Amy's also going to be up at Edinburgh Yarn Festival on the Thursday, so hopefully I'll be able to see her up there and have a bit of a chinwag with her. So then I made my way down to Northern Yarns, and Northern Yarn is run by Kate. She's just lovely. She focuses in on working direct with the farmers for breed specific yarns, and I can smell what I've got in front of me from here. It's lovely. So this is pure Teeswater, and it's a double knit, 200 grams, and it's woolen spun, and it's from a single farm, Highside in Teesdale, and it was spun by the Natural Fibre Company, and it is really very strong on the nose. It makes it sound like a fine wine. It's very strong on the nose, but it's got character. But I just think this is, I mean, it's soft, but I just think it's really going to soften up as it is washed and worn. And I got 200 grams of it because I figured I could actually dye this up and test how well Teeswater dyes. And I suspect it already takes dye really rather well, because I bought 2 skeins of Teeswater lace weight from Kate as well. Now, I know somebody's going to be shouting at me, shouting at the screen, saying, why have you bought lace weight? You really, really hate lace weight. But this is for a project where I would be doubling it up to make a near 4-ply. So I already have the 4-ply version sorted out in my head, but I wanted to be able to offer it up as a 4-ply or double up a lace weight, and to do that I have to test it out. And I just thought these 2 colours together were amazing. So it's a very light grey natural. I think it might be undyed, but that information isn't on there. And then a kind of brightish tealy blue colour, and they go so well together. And again, it's just really lovely and soft, but you can almost feel like the lanolin in it, but not so that it's horrible. You can feel the nature of the sheep in it, and it's lovely. So, like I say, I wasn't really meant to be buying stuff, and I came out of both yarn shops with stuff. In part because I want to be able to support these people. I want to be able to go in and give them a bit of money and do whatever I can in the podcast to support and promote anyone that's got a local yarn shop, my word, you need as much promotion as you can get. It's a hard job. You are constantly battling the big online guys. So I find it really difficult to walk into a good local yarn shop and not come out with something, because I want to be part of their structure and part of their support. Which, clearly I can manage with ease. Soup and bread for dinner for the next month. Soup and bread. So yes, it's been quite a little haul this month. But I've just been hammering through my stash, and having come off the back of last year where I wasn't buying personal yarn, I really missed it, and I've kind of made up for it in February. But then I am also going to Edinburgh. I might come away from Edinburgh with nothing. Next up, I have got Big Up. I have more crafting podcasts for you. I've got 4 of them for you to have a look at if you want. And again, I'm just going to continue to do this, and I'll give you a total mix of crafting podcasts, and some may land with you and some may not, and they will be of all different shapes and sizes. So first up is Cherry Heart Podcast. I'll be amazed if you don't know about this podcast, but you never know, you might not. It's Sandra Paul who does Cherry Heart. She's a designer. She does lots of crochet. She's fanatical. She uses lots of beautiful yarns. And she's got a kind of monthly-ish podcast, and she also does tutorials and bits and pieces. If you've seen the Spicy Life blanket or the Spicier Life blanket, that is Sandra. And she goes out on YouTube. Links to her main channel are in the show notes. The next up is my lovely Bernie and Derek from Bear in Sheep's Clothing. I've mentioned them before, and I said I would come back to them for the Big Up in the podcasts. The podcast from Belfast in Northern Ireland. They're absolute sweeties. It's like lo-fi podcasting, and I love it for that. They sit on their sofa, they drink cocktails, they have a laugh, and they talk about what they're up to. And one of the aspects that I really like about their podcast is they are a husband and wife team, and you can just see the support that they give each other and that they just have fun. If you ever see them at a yarn show vending as Bear in Sheep's Clothing, go and have a squish and go and say hello to them, because absolute honey pies. They're just lovely, and they are very specific about British wool. They buy in bear skeins. See what I did there? They buy in nude, undyed skeins that are specifically British breeds, and that's what Bernie dyes up. So check them out. They are just adorable. The next one is Stephanie, who is the Tatted Tatter. Hello, Stephanie. She's already on her 4th podcast. It feels like she started yesterday. She's on podcast number 4. I've been going for nearly 2 years, and I'm on podcast 27. I don't know how you're doing it, Stephanie. You need to just slow down. She's podcasting from San Diego, and she does all sorts of crafts, but predominantly it's crochet and tatting. And she's just really lovely. She's got a lovely manner about her. She's good fun. And yeah, you'll enjoy her podcast. She's just lovely, and she's very interactive on Instagram as well. And then my final one for this month is Hooked on Owls, Lacey. Hello, Lacey. It's Lacey's fault that I am doing Hannah's Treasure Island shawl. I was going to do a pair of mittens, and then I was watching her podcast today, and I saw that she had test knit it, and I thought, oh, that would look good in the rhubarb patch yarn. So I quickly pinged off a message to Hannah saying, when are you putting your pattern up, please? I want to make it. And Hannah's been a total sweetie and popped it into my email box. So I will try and add some photos up, if I haven't done it already, to show you how that is going to be looking when I finally start hooking it. But that aside, Lacey podcasts from Michigan. She's a crochet knitter. She designs crochet as well, including amigurumi, really cute little amigurumi animals. She already has 8 episodes out, and like a mad household full of children, animals, a bird, I think dogs as well, and yarn. And she's also on YouTube. So there's 4 lovely podcasts for you to check out. Now, I promised in the last podcast that I would start a thread with all of the different podcasts on it. I haven't done it yet. It's just time pressure. I will get around to it. But it just hasn't been done yet. So apologies, but it's coming. So that is it for Big Up. And my final is J'adore, which is the new segment. And it's instead of What's Good. And it's just a quick rundown of the things that have been catching my attention this month. And it might be music or books or film or TV or, it could be anything at all. So the first one I want to say is that I'm currently addicted by the latest Justin Timberlake song, which is called Say Something. I would totally go and see Justin Timberlake in concert. I would be like pervy middle-aged woman number 1 at the front of the crowd. I wouldn't quite be throwing my knickers at him, but oh, Justin, you'd be in trouble. See, pervy middle-aged woman. He's got a song with Chris Stapleton, who is like a country singer. And the reason I'm so enamoured with it is because it's shot in one take, so it's about 6.5 minutes, all done in one tracking shot, and it's sung in a massive old building as he goes up lifts, downstairs, and they have looks like about 100 backing singers singing off the balcony, and it just builds and builds and builds, and it means that acoustically it's really interesting because you hear the differences with his singing when he's in the lift compared to out in the auditorium compared to in a little room, and it's in my head and it won't go out. And when I get a song in my head, I will just listen to it on repeat until I'll listen to other stuff as well until a new song pops in and takes over the mantle of new favourite song. But for the moment, it's Mr. JT. Next one is a book that I am listening to. I think I've said before that I tend to listen to books rather than read them. I have an Audible subscription. And I've definitely told you before about the Great Courses series. I listen to the Vikings series. And the one that I'm listening to at the moment is The Irish Identity, Independence, History and Literature. I knew little bits and pieces about Irish history, but given that I used to live in southwest Scotland, which is very connected to Ireland, I felt that I should have a better understanding of Irish history. And when I saw this one as a potential for the Great Courses, I thought, bingo, that will just do the job very nicely. It's very interesting, in particular because a lot of the history is told through the literature of Ireland. So Yeats, Joyce, and it's such an interesting way of telling the story. And it's been really good. I think it's about 27 hours worth of lectures, and I wouldn't say I've taken in all of the information, but with all of the great courses, you could easily go back and listen to them again and take something different out of it the next time that you listen to it. So I love that. And for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, I seem to be on a little Irish bent at the moment. So TV shows that we've been watching are Derry Girls, hilarious, set in Northern Ireland. And then by the same writer, Lisa McGee, is London Irish, which was back from 2013, but it's on Channel 4, same as Derry Girls. And it's very similar to Derry Girls, but quite a lot ruder. Absolutely hilarious. And it's a bunch of 20-somethings living in London, as in London, not London, Derry. So if you're not of a delicate sensibility, London Irish might be right up your street. It is hilarious. And then last night we started watching, at the behest of my dad, Young Offenders. Quite a bit of swearing, but it's just funny. The sense of humour is just absolutely spot on. So it's a very Irish set of things that I've been into. if you're watching, you'll see that I'm rubbing something into my fingers, and it's one of the things I'm actually loving. I don't like the smell of it, but it is lanolin salve. When I craft, and in particular when I crochet, it's to do with the way that I hold my yarn. It strikes off against my thumbnail, the bed of my thumbnail, and my middle finger, and what I find is that it catches on the skin at the bottom and the cuticles, and it tears it. So I always end up with ragged bases at the bottom of my fingernails when I have to do a lot of crafting, and especially if it's a very woolly wool that I'm using, it snags it more because of the halos. And somebody had suggested that I try a lanolin salve to try and deal with it and smooth it out and rapidly repair my fingers, because if I'm working on a project, I can spend a week crocheting, like for 10 hours a day, just crocheting or knitting, and this can become a real problem for me. And again, I can end up getting a bit of a callus on my index finger, so I need to really look after my hands better than I have been. And I really like what the salve is doing. It won't be for everyone because it's the wool fat that comes off the sheep fleeces, and it smells, I mean, it goes away quite rapidly, but it's not a nice smelling thing. It's not horrendous, but it's not a beautiful scent. So it might not be everybody's cup of tea from that point of view. But I bought that in Northern Yarn as well. You can also get lanolin salve online. But it's working really, really nicely. And I'm hoping that inside of a week or so, it might grow, it might get my hands back up to a better place so that the wool stops snagging on them so much. But it is a constant problem. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has this problem, especially when you have to crochet a lot. And I don't always like lots of moisturiser and stuff on my hands, so the fact that I can just put this into the cuticles and recondition is really good. What else? One final one, which is yarn related. Now, I didn't show you this in Feeding the Habit because I just wanted to show you it under something that I am currently loving. When I was at Stitches, I went and saw Erica and Bella on their stand, and Erica has brought out some new colours in her Studio Linen yarn, which I've used before. It's really nice to work with, but she's brought out a really dark teal colour which is called Neo. Oh, glorious, doesn't even come close. And there's a green which is called Shrub, which is just the perfect colour for them, colour name for them. So I'll pop photos up as well. I've got some to put into the show notes. These colours are just fabulous. Now, I already have quite a bit of the Studio Linen in her kind of dusky pinky colour, which I'm hoping to work up into a summer top design. Not sure where all this time is coming from, but that's what I would like to do. But I can imagine the same top idea working in any of the colours, but in particular this Neo colour, and being able to move it over into not just a summer top, but something that you might wear in the evening as well as a kind of going out for dinner top. That's where I'm thinking of heading with it. So I think what I'll do is make it up in the pink and then remake it again in this Neo colour, because it's such a dark teal. It's like, you know, the flash that you get on a magpie. It's that dark a teal, that very iridescent kind of colour that you get. So loving this. The Studio Linen is really nice to work with, and there was a good range of colours to begin with, but the extra colours that Erica and Bella have brought in are really complementary, and there are some plummy shades in there that have been added as well. Watch this space. Good things will be happening with this yarn. And that is it, I think. Right, I'm off, people. Have a lovely month. I will be seeing you at the next Global Hookup. And remember, I'm on Instagram and Ravelry, and if you need me for anything, just ping me a message. And yeah, I hope to see you soon, and maybe some of you at Birmingham on the 25th of March. Until next month, bye bye. that look ridiculous? Yes. Do I have hair sticking up like normal? Do I look like a total plum? Always. Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome to the Crochet Circle podcast. Shut it, printer. Hello and welcome to the Crochet Circle podcast. Whished, whished, and whished. Come hither, little heater. Come to mummy. Rendezvous. The first one has to be global goal. That's a tongue twister. Burr. Would you like to see some finished objects? No, you wouldn't. I'd like some bloody warmth. Oh, seriously, or a total wally. I need a pee, but I don't know whether to do whips first. But I need a pee. So drinking's really going to help with that. Numpkin. Right. I need a pee. And I need tea. Possibly coffee. Brr. Honestly, you're such a weirdo.